Indiana Dunes National Park, on its surface, it's a peaceful stretch of sand and forest. But look a little closer and you'll find something else entirely. Stories of shadowy figures along the shoreline, phantom footsteps in the dunes, and campers who swear they've heard voices when no one else is around. Join us today for our next volume of Haunted Parks. Welcome to Morbid Outdoors, the podcast that ventures deep into the shadows of the wild. Here, we unravel the mysteries of missing persons, explore spine-chilling legends, and share the most morbid stories that nature has to offer. From the depths of the dense forests to the highest mountain peaks, we'll uncover the secrets that lie hidden in the great outdoors. Join us as we navigate the eerie, the unexplained, and the terrifying. So if you dare, grab your gear and let's embark on a journey into the unknown. This is Morbid Outdoors. Hi everyone, happy Wednesday. I just got back from Vegas for going to celebrate my dad's fourth marriage. And yeah, I'm happy to be back in Utah. I'm so happy it's spring. All the flowers are blooming and it's just so pretty and it smells so good outside. So naturally, my allergies are acting up a lot. I hope you guys are having a great Wednesday and I hope you've got fun weekend plans. With the weather warming up and the change of the seasons, I really hope that you are inspired to get outside and enjoy the great outdoors. That's pretty much it in terms of personal things. I've started to plan out my backpacking trips for the summer, and I'm so excited because, truth be told, I have not backpacked in a few years due to life getting in the way and all of that stuff. But I'm so happy to have hiked I think I've hiked 35 miles already this year, which isn't a lot, but I feel accomplished because I work full time and I do the podcast part time and finding time to be outside is hard, but I'm excited because this summer I have a couple of backpacking trips planned. Super stoked, doing some trails I've never done before, doing some I have, and I'm so excited. So let's jump into today's haunted parks. Oh, I forgot to say again, I'm your host Elise, and I'm so happy you're here. If you want extra content, I do have a Patreon. You can find me on Patreon. But anyways, let's get into it. Today we're heading into a place where the wind whispers secrets through the pines, and Lake Michigan crashes onto the shores that have seen more than just summer picnics and hiking boots. We are talking about Indiana Dunes National Park. Like I said, on the surface, it's a beautiful place, but it also holds a lot of intrigue and maybe a few spirits still lingering around. Some say the spirits of lost sailors still roam the coast. Others believe that the park's ancient burial grounds hold energies that never left. And then there are the disappearances, rare but unsettling. So pack your gear, but don't forget your flashlight, because today we're venturing into the haunted heart of Indiana's most beautiful and possibly most haunted wilderness. First, let's start with negative reviews. Emily said, "My husband and I have been traveling the U.S. for the last year visiting the national parks, and this is by far the worst park." Sam said, "I can't believe this is a national park. There is nothing to see here. It's just another place to go to the beach with a hike over a slightly big sand dune covered in trees. The coolest thing to see there was the steel mill next to the park." Carolyn said, "The worst national park I've been to so far. Been to over half of them. The beach is crowded and the hike was disappointing. Don't go out of your way for this one. Good time if you're looking for a good tailgating atmosphere. This is the spot. Everyone seemed to have a personal grill," which is Weird to mention in your review. Our last negative review is from someone whose initials are GJ. They said, I was disappointed in the quote dunes. I took pics of only the dunes that I saw. There's not many because that's all I saw. I had searched the Indiana dunes on Google and thought I would see actual dunes of sand that didn't have trees and bushes growing out of it. Then I went over to the dunes. I looked at the pics online and saw that most of the pics shown were not in Indiana. They were from another state or country. We drove through the park and there was overgrown forest and swamps next to the road, which wasn't all pretty to look at. ... No dunes. I'm glad some reviewers enjoyed themselves there, but I didn't. It was a waste of my time. So I personally have never been to Indiana Dunes National Park. I think it's a really unique national park from what I've read online and the stories I've heard, but it's probably not one that's on my top 10 to visit. And I've been to a lot of national parks. This one gets a lot of negative reviews, but there are a lot of people that love this area. And I can just imagine that if you live in Michigan and you live here, you would go pretty often. It looks so beautiful and there's so much rich history to it that I bet it's more locals visiting than people from out of state or even out of town. Indiana Dunes National Park is located in northwestern Indiana and it is managed by the National Park Service. It was authorized by Congress in 1966 as the Indiana Dunes National Lakeshore and was redesignated as the nation's 61st national park on February 15, 2019. The park runs for about 20 miles along the southern shore of Lake Michigan and covers just over 15,000 acres of land. In terms of first people, there is little evidence of permanent indigenous communities forming during the earlier years, but the evidence does suggest that there were seasonal hunting camps in this area. The earliest evidence for permanent camps was the occupation of the Ohio Valley by the Hopewell culture. 5 groups of mounds have been documented in the dunes area. These mounds are consistent with the period of 200 BCE to 800 CE, even though it was a short-lived permanency for this group of people. Beginning in the 1500s, European exploration and trade introduced more changes to the human environment. Entire populations began moving westward, while others sought to dominate larger geographic trading areas. So basically, the dunes became a middle point on a journey from the east to the west. It continued to remain a key hunting ground for villages over a wide area. And of course, we can't have a Haunted Parks episode without talking about a ghost town. City West was one of the several ghost towns situated in the dunes. Planned as a rival to Chicago, it was partially built in 1837, but failed that summer during a national economic panic. The remains of the town, partly carted off to be used as lumber, were located near the pavilion in the state park now stands until a forest fire in the 1850s destroyed whatever was left. Today, most of the coastline has been settled for use as homes, factories, and businesses, with some areas reserved for public parks. Indiana Dunes National Park has a hot, humid continental climate. That's a mouthful. Basically, it's hot, humid, and it can be beautiful despite it being hot and humid. The primary feature of Indiana Dunes National Park is Lake Michigan. The lake brings with it several weather-related conditions that can create threats to the enjoyment of the area. Like in the winter, there's a risk of shelf ice, and in the summer, there's a risk of rip currents. And those, from what I understand, are extremely dangerous. And if you are not comfortable and you do not know how to get yourself out of a rip tide or a rip current, you shouldn't be going in the water. This is something that kills people every year, whether it be at an ocean or, the beach or even Lake Michigan. Water is probably the scariest thing, in my opinion, when it comes to outdoor recreation. It is so dangerous. And so, if you need to review what to do if you get caught in a riptide, I would do that before you venture out onto the water this summer. In terms of plants and animals, the park includes habitats for several rare plants and animals. The park has more than 1,400 species of vascular plants, ranking it eighth in total plant species among all units of the national park system. At least 2 plant species are on the federal list of threatened and endangered species, which include Mead's milkweed and Pitcher's thistle. Federally threatened and endangered wildlife live here include Indiana bat, eastern Massasauga rattlesnake, I don't know if I said that right, Rufa red knot, and the piping plover. Along with its endangered animals, Indiana Dunes National Park is a host to a wide variety of wildlife, including white-tailed deer, red fox, raccoons, possum, rabbits, various rodents, Canadian geese, squirrels, hawks, turkey vultures, mallards, songbirds, and garter snakes. Recent records documented photographically indicate that the North American river otter began returning to the area in 2011 and in 2018, respectively. As of 2023, the Indiana Audubon have observed nearly 370 bird species living in or migrating through the Indiana dunes. So this place is a bird watcher's paradise. Now, there used to be many more animals that lived and inhabited this area. And there used to be cougars, bison, wolves, elk, and a lot more animals. But sadly, most were gone by 1918. And this was due to people hunting and, the encroaching civilization that pushes these animals out of their natural habitat. The park contains 15 miles of beaches, as well as sand dunes, bogs, marshes, swamps, fens, prairies, rivers, oak savannas, and woodland forests. And this national park boasts 45 miles of hiking trails. This national park also contains an interesting story about a cemetery. The Bailey Cemetery is located half a mile north of the Bailey homestead. Its location is a sandy bluff which once looked out across the dunes to Lake Michigan. Today, the forest covers the dunes and the lake is not visible. Numerous changes have occurred since the first burial in 1827. Joseph Bailey buried his only son in the fall of 1827 on a sandy knoll. He erected an oak cross on the site and a 3-sided shelter. After 1866, the Bailey area was no longer the quiet place that it had been. Other families now lived in the area, and some had even been using the cemetery for their families as well. However, in late 1866, Rose Howe, who was the granddaughter of Joseph Bailey, she had the family plots fenced and requested that those other families remove their deceased ones to other cemeteries, which is kind of insane. In 1879, she then had the entire cemetery walled in and an iron gate installed to the north. So this woman, who was the granddaughter of the original founder of this area, I think it's a little crazy for her to be like, hey, I want this space back. You need to dig up your loved ones and bury them somewhere else. I know it was the 1800s, but I thought that we were very reverent when it came to, being dead and being buried. And I've always heard the phrase you don't want to disturb the dead. And I just think it's crazy that she was like, oh, hey, take your loved ones out. I don't want them here anymore. But if it was her land, I guess she had that right. Then finally in 1914, she took it one step further to protect the cemetery of her family. She had the area inside the wall filled with sand. Stone steps replaced the gate to a contemplative walk atop this cemetery. An oaken cross was raised atop this new ground, continuing the tradition started by her grandfather. Rose Howe died in 1916 while in California. She was returned to Indiana in 1917 and she was the last burial in the family cemetery. So, very interesting that there's a lot of history in this national park, and that this story was mentioned online because it's such a strange thing, I think. Before this place was a national park, it was a state park, and one of the people that inhabited it was Alice Mabel Gray. She was often referred to as Diana of the Dunes. She was a woman who lived in the Indiana Dunes in the early 1900s. She was known for her unconventional lifestyle and passion for the natural beauty of this very area. So let's talk a little bit about her history. After college in 1903, she went to work for the U.S. Naval Observatory as a mathematician, but she ended up leaving 2 years later to take graduate courses at the University of Göttingen in Germany, and I'm probably saying that wrong. She returned to the States a year later and was employed as a stenographer at the University of Chicago. By 1915, she'd become dissatisfied with her work. She disdained wage-earning labor, calling it slavery, and loathed the need to constantly work to support herself in Chicago. I can relate to this. I don't live in Chicago, but is it really fun to go to work every day? No. Some reports indicate that she may have had a love affair with a professor at the university that went badly, and maybe that's why she wanted to leave. Later that year, she left Chicago and headed for the Indiana Dunes, taking up residence in an abandoned fishing shack she called Driftwood. Like, she just seriously picked up all of her stuff and went to live in the dunes. And she lived peacefully there. She lived off of fish and berries in the park and occasionally made trips to nearby cities to purchase supplies and borrow books from the nearby library. So she was, she got kind of fed up with working for a living and not really feel like she was living her life. And she loved the Indiana Dunes and she just wanted to live there. I mean, if I could pack all my shit up and move to, I don't know, like Yosemite, I think that would be pretty freaking awesome. And keep in mind, this is before it was a national park. So there weren't really rules about her just living in the dunes. After fishermen reported seeing her in the waters of Lake Michigan, the story eventually got to the ears of Chicago reporters. After all, this is in the time where women just didn't walk off and live alone, especially on a beach in the early 1900s. Women didn't even have the right to vote yet. So, her story of this independent woman who's living off of the land and living in the dunes was kind of a big deal. So people went out to the shore in search of her to give an interview. And whether those interviews ever happened or not, it's not clear. But on July 23rd, 1916, the Chicago Examiner ran an article about Alice. Her reason for living amongst the dunes was, this is what she said: "I want to live my own life, a free life." And that was kind of her whole reason for doing what she did. She just wanted to live a free life away from the work, the monotony, and the societal expectations of the time. You could say she was a feminist. So as time went on, she's living in the dunes, she's enjoying herself. But as we know, as there's more people and people are moving out to pretty areas, developers were building houses closer and closer to the dunes. And Diana began to publicly speak about the need to preserve the dunes and basically stop building here. I love this place. I don't want it to get ruined. And I'm going to refer to her as Diana or Alice, depending. She was known by both, but her name was Alice, but she was called Diana of the Dunes. I think for alliterative purposes, but not sure. So she actually kind of went and started speaking up about the need to preserve this area. And in an editorial and in a talk to the Prairie Club in Chicago, she told the virtues of saving the natural beauty of the dunes. Unfortunately, in 1925, she was diagnosed with kidney disease, but opted not to receive treatment. She died on February 8th of uremia poisoning. Her tombstone in the Oak Lawn Cemetery at Gary, Indiana read Alice Gray Wilson. So, Alice's legacy, however, it lived on past her life. I mean, I'm not going to go into intense detail about all of her advocacy and her work because that is amazing. What she did was amazing, but it's even more amazing that it all worked. And I mean, it's so crazy how this one woman changed the history of this land forever. I mean, she did so much for the dunes of Indiana, and she really, really, really loved them. And so her love for this place still, you can still feel it as if you go from what I read online. And she's one of the spirits that's said to still be in the dunes. So, due to her efforts, in 1966, Indiana Dunes became a unit of the National Park Service. And in 2019, it became the Indiana Dunes National Park. To honor Alice's legacy, the park launched the Diana of the Dunes Dare. This is where visitors to the park are encouraged to walk along the 3 dunes Alice may have walked. And it's like a little hike, and there are like little plaques that talk about the history and her advocacy and activism for the dunes. But many people report seeing her ghost in and around the dunes. Her ghost is less frightening than peculiar, it's stated, and both hikers and beachgoers have reported seeing a nude woman running along the sands, disappearing into the frothy waters of Lake Michigan. Her ghost doesn't bother anyone. She minds her own business, but she's often seen frolicking and enjoying her natural surroundings, much like she did while she was alive. So, I couldn't find, if she did like skinny dip, but I think everyone assumes this is Alice's or Diana of the Dunes' ghost. While the ghost stories are intriguing, the real story of Diana of the Dunes is that of a woman who embraced nature and lived outside of those societal norms, ultimately becoming a symbol of the Indiana Dunes. You will not hear Indiana Dunes National Park talked about without hearing about Alice's story, which is so cool. And I just love that this story and this like ghost story, it's not because there was murder or like negativity or, it's not like she was murdered out there. Her story is quite the opposite. She's not a malevolent spirit, and she wasn't murdered. Like I said, she was just a badass woman who loved this place so much and fought so hard for it. She loved it so much, her spirit quite literally lives on there. So if you ever visit Indiana Dunes National Park, you should check out Diana's Dare and walk the trail, and maybe you might catch a glimpse of her. Around the same time that Indiana Dunes got that national park protection, before it was a national park in 1966, 3 girls or 3 women disappeared there, and they have never been found. And this happened 58 years ago. 19-year-old Patricia Blau was with 2 friends, 19-year-old Renee Bruhl and 21-year-old Ann Miller. And the 3 women were last seen on the shores, sunning themselves, laughing. They were just having a good time, and they were swimming and talking and just hanging out. According to investigative reports, they were last seen boarding a trimaran type boat. It was described as being white with a turquoise interior, around 16 to 18 feet long. The boat was occupied by one white male who was well tanned with dark wavy hair, wearing a beach jacket, and he appeared to be about 20 to 22 years old. So the girls were last seen boarding this boat. Now, they did leave like all of their stuff on the beach. They left their clothing. They weren't like naked. They had their suits on and stuff, but they left their clothing, blankets, and other personal effects on the beach, which tells me that they probably had planned to come back. The entire beach was searched along with the grounds of the North Marsh area. All cabins on the grounds were searched, along with all of the trails. But these women were never found. I mean, they were even doing Civil Air Patrol searches too. When, 3 19-year-old girls go missing back in the 60s, it was a huge deal. Lots of theories were centered around a possible abortion thing happening on boats in the water. People suspected that the women ran away due to life problems like being pregnant out of marriage or marital problems, but no one really knows what happened that day. According to the Chicago Tribune, investigators at the time came up with several ideas of what may have happened to the 3 young women. Some of these ideas were they were involved in a horrible boating accident that left no physical trace of anyone aboard, or that they were victims of an abduction that turned into murder aboard the boat. No one really knows, like I said. And the current police captain says no boating accidents were reported or observed during that time on that day. Police did investigate the idea of possible abduction. No suspects were ever developed in Indiana. There was a suspect in Chicago, however, that lead never provided any merit or further investigation. Basically, these women were at the beach enjoying a summer day, talking, laughing, swimming. They were last seen getting on this boat, and they were never seen again. Their remains haven't been found. No one knows where they are. And there are no suspects or persons of interest in this case, even 58 years later. But the police department is following up on any leads that may be reported to them about this case. Patricia Blau and Renee Bruhl would be 76 years old this year, and Ann Miller would be 78. Anyone with information on the disappearances of Patricia, Renee, and Ann are asked to call the Westchester Police Department at 708-345-0060. Another reason Indiana Dunes National Park is said to be haunted is because of sailors still walking the shores of Lake Michigan. I'm not sure if you know this or not, but Lake Michigan has a ton of shipwrecks, especially way back, hundreds of years ago. And shipwrecks are still being found to this day, even 130 years later. So a lot of people suspect that Lake Michigan is haunted, and the shores of Lake Michigan are haunted because of all of the shipwrecks and lost souls in this giant lake. I don't know, that just creeps me out. I think when it has to do with, like I said, water is powerful, it's scary, and those women could have been tossed off of that boat due to who knows why, and we might never find their remains. I mean, there was a huge shipwreck that was just found last year, and it went down in 1893, and it was a 130-foot ship. And a storm rolled in and it crashed, and it was just found 130 years later, a huge boat. So imagine how many people, how many remains are at the bottom of Lake Michigan that we just don't know about. So Indiana Dunes National Park is a very unique and beautiful place to visit, although it's likely that you might see an apparition or two when you're visiting. As always, recreate responsibly, and remember, sometimes the great outdoors aren't always great. Thanks for listening to Morbid Outdoors. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, make sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform. It's free, easy, and it helps us out immensely. When you subscribe, you get updates on our latest episodes, and it also boosts our visibility, making it easier for other curious souls to find us. Another great way to support Morbid Outdoors is by leaving us a review. Whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, A quick review helps us know what you love about the show. Find us on Instagram and Facebook at Morbid Outdoors Podcast. You can email us case suggestions and your campfire stories at morbidoutdoorspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks so much for the support, and I'll see you next time. Hi, everyone. I hope that I really do. When I say I hope that you're having a great week, I really do. I also hope, like I said earlier, I hope you have plans to get outside. There are so many health benefits, mental health benefits, physical health benefits to just spending time outside. Even if you're not hiking or doing anything strenuous, we need sunshine. We need to be among the trees, and it just makes you happy? So I hope that this weekend you're setting off somewhere beautiful. I hope to go hiking this weekend, although I'm not sure because right now I'm so tired after driving 6 hours today. Can I even imagine myself doing anything in the near future? I don't have anything personal to talk about, but I just wanted to say, if you like the show, if you enjoy it, please share with your friends and family. I would love to grow this thing, and I have big plans, but I need your help. So share, and thank you guys so much for listening. I'll see you next time.